Good evening. You are tuning into AWANI Tonight with me, Saraya Mia. Anthony Blinken visits Kuala Lumpur. We get a one-on-one with the top diplomat on boosting bilateral ties. And Malaysia is set to impose heavier sentences for human trafficking. That's coming up. The U.S. is weighing tougher measures to pressure Myanmar's junta to return to a democratic trajectory. In a joint press conference, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and Foreign Minister Datuk Sri Saifuddin Abdullah said, apart from additional measures to pressure the junta, there was an urgent need for ASEAN to find a permanent solution to the situation in Myanmar. Blinken noted that the situation in Myanmar in the 10 months since the coup has gotten worse with mass arrests and violence against protesters.
We continue also to look actively at terminations of the actions taken in Myanmar and whether they constitute genocide, and that's something we're looking at very actively right now.
Saifuddin meanwhile said Malaysia believes that ASEAN must adopt a more coherent position when it comes to Myanmar. Blinken added that President Joe Biden has invited Southeast Asian leaders to a summit next year to discuss the crisis in Myanmar. Blinken is in Kuala Lumpur on a three-nation trip in Southeast Asia. He will visit Thailand next. In conjunction with Secretary Blinken's visit to Malaysia, Astro AWANI was given the opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation with him. Here is the first part of Astro AWANI's editor-in-chief, Ashwat Ismail's interview with Secretary Blinken.
My first question definitely is about what benefit my fellow Malaysians and Malaysian business communities and the people of ASEAN. If we look into the bigger picture, the United States can afford to be absent from the region's evolving economic potential. And as you have pointed out clearly in your joint press conference this morning, and the US will do more in delivering stability, growth, and also innovation. So how does this new focus benefit my fellow Malaysians, Malaysian businesses, and also people of ASEAN in general?
Well, we're already building on a strong foundation. The United States is already one of the leading investors in Malaysia in terms of our direct foreign investment. And in fact, just in the last week, there have been very significant new investments, including from Microsoft and including from Intel. But we're working to build a new economic framework for the entire Indo-Pacific region, of which we're a part, and that I believe Malaysia will also benefit from, that will facilitate trade, that will help us, in particular, take advantage of the digital economy that is affecting so many of our lives, that will involve more investment in infrastructure, but in a way that really is a race to the top, with infrastructure that is done in a way that protects the rights of workers and the environment, doesn't create debt for countries that are receiving the investments, and also focuses on building infrastructure that is green as well. Working on supply chains. Malaysia is a critical component of very, very important supply chains, including on things like semiconductors. And in all of these ways and more, I think we can deepen the economic relationship, the economic partnership that, again, already has a strong foundation.
We'll be bringing you more of the exclusive interview with Secretary Blinken. Tune in to AWANI Tonight tomorrow. The Dewan Rakyat has passed the Anti-Trafficking in Persons and Anti-Smuggling of Migrants Amendment Bill 2021 that could see offenders jailed for life. The amendments would see increases in punishment for several offences, including raising prison sentences between 15 and 20 years. According to Home Minister Datuk Sri Hamzah Zainuddin, for more serious crimes, the proposed amendments also increases the punishment to a maximum jail term of 30 years or similar to life imprisonment, which also includes whipping. Among examples of more serious crimes involve public servants discharging their duties and repeat offenders. He said this when tabling the bill for its second reading in the Dewan Rakyat. An anti-human trafficking and anti-smuggling of migrants council will also be set up under the amendments. The bodies of 11 Indonesian nationals have been found along the Tanjung Balau beach in Kota Tinggi. The boat they were on capsized due to bad weather earlier this morning. According to Johor Malaysian Maritime Enforcement Agency, 14 victims were rescued, while at least 25 others are still missing and feared to have drowned. The boat with the immigrants tried to enter Malaysia illegally around 4:30 a.m. when it capsized due to strong winds and heavy current. The immigrants, men and women, reportedly each paid around 2,000 to 3,000 ringgit to be brought into the country. Authorities say they believe the boat came from Batam. Time for a quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Digital Nasional Berhad DNB has announced that Telekom Malaysia Berhad and YTL Communications Sdn Berhad will be the first two operators in the country to provide 5G access to their respective customers within coverage areas. DNB said it will also offer free wholesale 5G services to all mobile network operators that are integrated into its network. This offer is applicable to 5G live sites in certain areas throughout Putrajaya, Cyberjaya and Kuala Lumpur until March 31st, 2022.
Ensuring that Malaysia gets to enjoy 5G right now. Thank you as well to all the public agencies that have come together to drive the 5G agenda and build the communications of a digital Malaysia, foundations of a digital Malaysia. We would once again like to thank and congratulate TM and Unify, and YES and YTL Communications for taking this first step to satisfy the inherent demand for 5G services by their customers, the young and the old. We now look forward to working with the entire telecommunications industry to deliver 5G services to Keluarga Malaysia throughout Malaysia.
The Inland Revenue Board can now access bank accounts belonging to taxpayers without warning or permission for review or investigations. The controversial amendment in the Finance 2021 bill was passed at the Dewan Rakyat today with a simple voice note. Previously, taxpayers had to sign a consent form before banks could furnish bank account information to authorities. However, with the inclusion of the proposed amendments to Section 106A of the Income Tax Act, authorities will be able to request this from banks directly, and banks will not be allowed to disclose these requests to any person. It is estimated that tax evasion amounts to a whopping 300 billion ringgit each year, or 18% of the country's gross domestic product. 13% of teenagers in Kuala Lumpur cannot afford to buy sanitary pads. This is according to a study carried out by the Women, Family and Community Development Ministry in relation to period poverty, a situation where girls or their families can't afford to buy feminine hygiene products due to financial constraints. The study involved teenagers and women aged 13 to 24 from the B40 group, involving 13 People's Housing Project communities and 2 social welfare department institutions around the capital city. Deputy Minister Datuk Siti Zailah Muhammad Yusof said her ministry carried out awareness programs, distributed hygiene kits to 130,000 teenagers, as well as educated teenagers on health issues to overcome the problem. She was replying to Senator Datuk T. Mohan, who wanted to know the actual situation of period poverty, as well as the government's long-term plans to address it. On the international front, Australia reopened borders to vaccinated non-citizens after a near 2-year ban. Skilled migrants and foreign students are finally allowed to entry, that is expected to help ease labour shortages facing the country. The return of foreign students, who are worth about $25 billion a year to the Australian economy, will also help businesses to fill many casual jobs. The emergence of Omicron forced officials to delay the border reopening by 2 weeks after health officials sought a temporary pause to get more information about the strain. The easing in travel rules comes as the state of New South Wales lifted most restrictions for the unvaccinated, while its most isolated state, Western Australia, on Tuesday announced it will fully reopen its borders on February 5th after almost 2 years sealed off from the world. South Korea warned that it may reinstate stricter social distancing measures after the country's daily COVID-19 cases hit a record high. Close to 8,000 new cases were reported yesterday, with the number of patients in serious condition also reaching a new high, putting the strain on the healthcare system. Prime Minister Kim Boo-kyum said the government is considering a ban on gatherings and implementing a curfew on dining in eating establishments. An official announcement is expected on Friday. South Korea has fully vaccinated more than 94% of its adults so far, and it is accelerating its booster shot campaign by shortening intervals for all ages. But the number of new cases has been spiraling since authorities eased distancing rules last month. In other news, protesters across Myanmar have called on the international community to introduce targeted sanctions on oil and gas funds in the country. The sector is Myanmar's largest source of foreign currency revenue, and the sanctions, they say, will help stop abuses by the military junta. The sanctions would target state-owned Myanmar Oil and Gas Enterprise, which is a joint venture partner in all offshore gas projects in Myanmar, with companies like France's Total, US's Chevron, and Thailand's PTT Exploration and Production. Pro-sanctions activists want revenues generated from the oil and gas projects to be placed in offshore bank accounts that the military can't touch. Last Friday, the U.S. announced a raft of sanctions against several Myanmar officials and entities, but left out oil or gas revenues. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, speaking from Kuala Lumpur today, said Washington is weighing tough new sanctions on Myanmar to pressure the junta to restore democracy in the country. In a territory where dominant political parties have been entrenched for decades, what can Sarawak's political opposition offer? Can it hope to wrestle power from their rivals? Tonight on Consider This, we speak to Chong Chiang Jen, Chief of Sarawak Pakatan Harapan. That is all we have for you on AWANI Tonight. Get the latest news updates on COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines from astroawani.com and Astro AWANI app. I'm Saraya Mia. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon.